In this video, you'll learn how critical thinking can completely transform the way you make decisions, solve problems, and approach life. By the end, you'll have practical mental tools to improve your mindset and accelerate your personal growth. Have you ever noticed that most people don't actually think? Now, before somebody gets offended, hear me out. I'm not saying people are stupid. Far from it. What I'm saying is that most people spend their lives accepting conclusions that were handed to them by someone else. A parent, a teacher, a friend, a religious leader, or just the majority. And somewhere along the way, many people stopped asking the most important question a human being can ask. How do I know that's actually true? That's what we're talking about today. Critical thinking. Not the version they teach you in school where you memorize a definition and move on. I'm talking about real world critical thinking. The kind that upgrades your mindset. The kind that helps you separate truth from noise. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Your life will never rise above the quality of your thinking. And if your thinking is built on bad assumptions, everything built on top of it becomes unstable. So let's dig into it. Here's a controversial statement. Most people don't want the truth. They want confirmation. Think about that for a second. When people say they want the truth, what they often mean is they want someone to tell them they're right. And those are two very different things. Truth doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care about politics. And it certainly doesn't care about popularity. Truth just is. But here's the problem. Us humans are wired for comfort. We're social creatures. We want acceptance. We want belonging. We want to fit in. And questioning the group can be uncomfortable. Sometimes it can even be painful. So what do most people do? They outsource their thinking. They adopt opinions instead of examining them. They inherit beliefs instead of testing them. And once that happens, critical thinking goes out the window. Because now you're defending a position instead of investigating reality. Imagine a worker on a massive industrial floor. For years, his specific task is to pull a heavy steel lever every time a red warning light flashes on the line. He never asks what the lever actually does, he just pulls it. Why? Because the guy who trained him pulled it. Because the shift manager expects him to pull it. Because pulling it keeps the line moving and keeps him out of trouble. Then, one day, the main belt jams, and maintenance has to tear open the machinery. When they look inside, they realize the cable attached to that lever snapped a decade ago. It hasn't been connected to a single moving part in 10 years. That worker spent a massive chunk of his life burning his own energy, pulling a dead weight, simply because he accepted an instruction that was handed to him without ever once stopping to ask the machine, what am I actually doing this for? And that is exactly what most people do with their mindset. Let's talk about certainty. People love certainty. They love feeling like they have everything figured out. The problem is that certainty is often the enemy of growth. The moment you become absolutely convinced that you already know everything, you stop learning. Think about the smartest people you've ever met, the truly intelligent ones. What do they usually say? I don't know. Not because they're clueless, because they understand how much more there is left to learn. Meanwhile, the people who know everything are usually the ones learning nothing. Critical thinking begins when you become comfortable saying, maybe I'm wrong. Now let's be clear. Being wrong isn't weakness. Being wrong is information. Being wrong is how you grow. Every major breakthrough you've ever had in your life came from discovering that something you believed wasn't entirely true. That's not failure, that's progress. Critical thinking isn't automatic disbelief. It's disciplined curiosity. It's asking questions. It's examining evidence and following logic wherever it leads, even when the answer makes you uncomfortable, especially when the answer makes you uncomfortable. Critical thinking asks, what evidence supports this? What evidence challenges it? What assumptions am I making? Could there be another explanation? What if the opposite were true? These questions sound simple, but they are incredibly powerful because they force you to stop reacting and start reasoning. And that's where personal growth begins. Let's talk consequences, because this isn't just some philosophical exercise. This affects every area of your life: relationships, money, health, career, personal development, everything. If you don't think critically, you'll make decisions based on emotions, assumptions, and social pressure. You'll buy things you don't need, believe things that aren't true, follow advice that doesn't apply to your situation, stay stuck in patterns that don't serve you. And the worst part? You'll keep experiencing the same outcomes while wondering why nothing changes. Meanwhile, the real issue isn't your circumstances, it's the framework you're using to interpret those circumstances. Your mindset changes, no, your mindset shapes your reality, not because of magic, because your mindset shapes your decisions. And your decisions shape your life. So how do we actually improve critical thinking? Here's a few practical habits. First, challenge your own beliefs, not just other people's, your own. That's where the real work happens. Pick a belief you hold strongly, then ask yourself, what evidence would change my mind? If the answer is nothing, then you're not thinking critically. You're protecting an identity. Second, seek opposing viewpoints, not to argue, to understand. You don't have to agree with everyone, but if you can't explain the other side fairly, you probably don't understand the issue as well as you think. Third, slow down. Most bad decisions happen because people don't reflect, and they react. Pause, think, analyze, question. Fourth, separate facts from interpretations. Facts are what happened. Interpretations are the stories we tell ourselves about what happened. Confusing those two creates endless problems. And finally, get comfortable being uncomfortable, because growth lives there, truth lives there, and wisdom live there. This is where things get personal. For me, critical thinking isn't about winning arguments. It's not about sounding smart, and it's not about proving others are wrong. It's about getting closer to reality, closer to truth. Because reality doesn't change based on what we wish was true. And if we're serious about personal growth, then truth has to come before comfort. That means questioning yourself, questioning your assumptions, questioning the stories you've been told and the stories you've told yourself. Not because you're cynical, because you're committed to understanding. You're committed to growth. Because you're committed to becoming the kind of person who thinks independently rather than borrowing someone else's conclusions. The world doesn't need more people repeating talking points. It needs more people willing to think. More people willing to ask questions. Willing to challenge assumptions. More people willing to pursue truth, even when it's inconvenient. And if you're watching this, I hope you're one of those people, because critical thinking isn't just a skill, it's a way of living. And the difference between being led and leading yourself is the difference between reacting and understanding, between existing and evolving. So here's my challenge to you. This week, question one thing you've always assumed was true. Not because it's wrong, because it's worth examining. You might discover you're right. You might discover you're wrong. Either way, you'll be thinking. And that's the whole point. Remember, the goal isn't to think like everyone else. The goal isn't even to think like me. The goal is to think for yourself. Because the moment you start doing that, your mindset changes. And when your mindset changes, your life starts changing with it. Life. Just live it.